You're welcome to the continuation of our class under nutrition and health, and today we're continuing with the discussion on minerals. Remember, in the last class we talked about other vitamins, and remember that we concluded with vitamin K. We concluded with vitamin K. And so today we are continuing with the minerals. More than 50 chemical elements are found in the human body which are required for growth, repair, and regulation of vital body functions. And this can be divided into three major groups. They include, number one, the major minerals. These include calcium, phosphorus, sodium, potassium, and magnesium. And then you have the trace elements, which is number two. Remember, number one, the major minerals, which include calcium, phosphorus, sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Then you have the trace elements, and these elements required by the body in quantities of less than a few milligrams per day. Examples include iron, iodine, fluorine, zinc, copper, cobalt, chromium, manganese, molybdenum, selenium, nickel, tin, silicon, and vanadium. Many more have been added to this list in the past few years, and so we'll just see a few of them. On the other hand, at number three, under minerals, there are trace contaminants with no known function. We have the major minerals, the trace elements, then number three, the trace contaminants with no known function, and they include lead, mercury, barium, boron, and aluminium. They are of unknown function, and they are seen as trace contaminants. Only a few mineral elements, for example, calcium, phosphorus, sodium, iron, fluorine, and iodine, are associated with clearly recognizable clinical situations in man. Now, for none of the other elements do we know with any certainty for their metabolic roles. Now, the bioavailability of minerals such as iron and zinc may be low in a total vegetarian diet because of the presence of substances such as phytic acids. Man is not likely to suffer from trace element deficiency as long as he is omnivorous, because surveys have shown that mineral deficiencies are no longer greater among vegetarians than among non-vegetarians. In fact, man's need for trace elements has not yet been precisely determined. So trace elements should not be used as a dietary supplement, since excessive amounts can have injurious effects. Let's look at calcium. We're taking calcium now as a topic, and we shall be dealing with this topic, calcium, in the next few minutes. Calcium is a major mineral element of the body, and it constitutes about 1.5 to 2% of the body weight of an adult human. An average adult body contains about 1,200 grams of calcium, of which 98% is found in the bones, and the amount of calcium in the blood is usually about 10 milligrams per year. And so the developing fetus requires about 30 grams of calcium, and there is a dynamic equilibrium between the calcium in the blood and that in the skeleton. So this equilibrium is maintained by the interaction of vitamin D, parathyroid hormone, and probably calcitonin. Now, with what I have just told you, it is important that you take three lessons from there, or three key points. Number one is that the amount of calcium in the blood is usually about 10 milligrams per day in concentration, and also is that 98% is found in the bones. And finally, is that there's always a usual dynamic equilibrium balance between calcium in the blood and that in the skeleton. And this equilibrium is maintained by the interaction of vitamin D, parathyroid hormone, and in some cases, calcitonin. Let's see the function of calcium. Function of calcium. Ionized calcium in the plasma has many vital functions, including formation of bones and teeth, coagulation of blood, contraction of muscles, cardiac action, milk production, relay of electrical and chemical messages that arrive at a cell surface membrane to the biochemical machinery within the surface membrane, and also keeping the membranes of the cells intact within the cell, and also keeping the metabolism of enzymes and hormones. It also plays a crucial role in the transformation of light to electrical impulses in the retina. In short, the calcium ion controls many life processes ranging from muscle contraction to cell division. What are the sources of calcium? Calcium is readily available from many sources. By far, the best natural resources or best natural sources are milk and milk products. An example includes cheese, skim milk, and buttermilk, eggs, and fish. A liter of cow's milk provides about 1,200 milligrams of calcium, and the human milk about 300 milligrams. Calcium occurs in milk as calcium calciogenate, which is readily assimilated by the body. And the cheapest dietary sources are the green leaf vegetables, cereals, and millets. So the limiting factor in the complete absorption of calcium from green leafy vegetables is the presence of oxalic acid, with which calcium forms an insoluble compound. It is important that you have this in mind. The limiting factor in the complete absorption of calcium from green leaf vegetables is the presence of oxalic acid, with which calcium forms an insoluble compound. So calcium oxalate, which interferes with the absorption of calcium, is a major aspect that affects the absorption of calcium. So most cereals are generous providers of calcium, and including the millet is particularly rich in calcium. So rice is very deficient in calcium. Take note of that. And the bioavailability of calcium from cereals is poor because of the presence of phytic acid. We've mentioned oxalic acid, number one. Now we're seeing the impact of phytic acid, which forms an insoluble compound with calcium. So an additional source of calcium is the drinking water, which may provide up to 200 milligrams per day. An additional source of calcium is the drinking water, which may provide up to 200 milligrams per day. Next is the absorption of calcium. Let's see the absorption of calcium. Overall, about 20 to 30% of dietary calcium is normally absorbed. Absorption of calcium is enhanced by vitamin D and the decrease by the presence of phytates and oxalates and fatty acids in the diet. Again, absorption of calcium is enhanced by vitamin D, and a decrease is caused by the presence of phytates, oxalates, and fatty acids in the diet. So calcium absorption is regulated to some extent by the body's needs. How about when calcium is deficient? So let's see deficiency of calcium. Deficiency of calcium. There are no clear-cut disease due to calcium deficiency. And up to now, we have not seen it as a kind of observation. So no clear-cut disease due to calcium deficiency has ever been observed, even under conditions of low intake. And therefore it has been established that if the intake of vitamin D is adequate, then the problems of rickets and osteomalacia do not arise, even with low calcium intake. Anyways, on the other hand, no deleterious effects have been observed in man as a result of prolonged intake of large amount of dietary calcium. Neither have any benefits been demonstrated. So in terms of deficiency, whether you take a lot of calcium or you take less calcium, we have not in science observed any disease that could result from prolonged taking or reduced taking of calcium. Let's see the requirement for calcium. In man, a daily intake of 600 milligrams of calcium has been suggested for adults. 600 milligrams for calcium has been suggested for adults. The physiological requirements are higher in children. Expectant and nursing mothers, intake values recommended by ICMR In other words, it is the international correlation rate that determines and requires that it should be higher in children and also in nursing mothers. So that is all for calcium. We have quickly seen the function, the sources, the effect of absorption, where we talked about the presence of phytates, oxalates, and fatty acids in the diet, and how vitamin D helps to increase it. We've seen the deficiency of no effect, whether more or less intake of calcium, and we have seen the requirement, 600 milligram of calcium is what has been suggested for day, but children need more, and pregnant women, pregnant and nursing mothers, need more. Let's see phosphorus. Phosphorus is essential for the formation of bones and teeth, and it plays an important part in all metabolisms. An adult human body contains about 400 to 700 grams of phosphorus as phosphates, and most of this occurs in bones and in teeth. Phosphorus is widely distributed in foodstuffs. Its deficiency rarely occurs. A large part of phosphorus present in vegetable food occurs in combination with phytin and is available to the body only to the extent of 40 to 60%. The WHO committees, as well as the FAOs, have also discussed the requirements, and they have not been specifically considered. But other groups of experts have suggested that phosphorus intake should be at least equal to calcium intake. So in most age groups, these have been advised, except in infancy, where the ratio suggested is 1 to ratio 1.5. So more should be taken by children, as well as, like I told you, nursing mothers. Let's see sodium. Sodium is found in all body fluids. The adult human body contains about 100 grams of sodium ion. Sodium occurs in many foods and is also added to food during cooking in the form of sodium chloride. Sodium is lost from the body through urine and sweat. That which is passed out in urine is regulated by the kidney, but that which is lost by sweating is not controlled. So, depletion of sodium chloride causes muscular cramps. Take note of that. Depletion of sodium chloride causes muscular cramps. The requirement of sodium chloride depends upon climate, occupation, and physical activity. Adult requirement is about 5 grams per day, and a strong relationship between hypertension and dietary salt intake has been observed. An intake of more than 10 grams of salt per day is considered to have definitive tendency to raise blood pressure. So, a large intake of sodium in salts is dangerous, and it has been seen that there is a clear association between hypertension and an increased concentration of sodium in the body system. And therefore, depletion of sodium chloride causes muscular cramps, and it is important that we take note of this and always remember that sodium is lost from the body through urine and sweat. Now, that which is passed out of the urine is regulated by the kidney, and that which is passed out of the sweat is not controlled. Now, let us see potassium. Let's see potassium now. The adult human body contains about 250 grams of potassium. 250 grams of potassium. Potassium occurs widely in foodstuffs, so there's little likelihood of its deficiency. Potassium is vasoactive. It increases blood flow, and it sustains metabolic needs of the tissue. Potassium is released by endothelial cells. Potassium supplements have been observed to lower blood pressure, although the response is slow. Much of the information regarding potassium and blood pressure is in relation to dietary sodium. And so most of the information that we have regarding the impact of potassium and blood pressure is in line with the observation taken from dietary sodium via the salt intake. So high dietary sodium low dietary potassium have been implicated in the etiology of hypertension. So when there is high dietary sodium and there is low dietary potassium, the both part in this trend has been observed to be associated with hypertension, and is evidenced by epidemiological clinical studies that have been done in the past. So the ideal desirable sodium potassium ratio in diet should be 1:1 in terms of the concentration. Let's now see magnesium. Magnesium is a constituent of bones and is present in all body cells. Human adult body contains about 25 grams of magnesium, of which about half is found in the skeleton. It appears that magnesium is essential for the normal metabolism of calcium and potassium. Magnesium deficiency may occur in chronic alcoholics, cirrhosis of liver, toxemias of pregnancy, protein energy malnutrition, and malabsorption syndrome. The principal clinical features attributed to magnesium deficiency include irritability, tetany, hyperreflexia, and occasionally hyporeflexia. Requirements are estimated to be about 340 milligrams per day for adults. So once again, what are the take-home from magnesium that we've just talked about? You find it in the bone, it's present in all the body cells, and it contains about 25 grams of magnesium, of which that's the body itself now, 25 grams of magnesium, in which about half of them is found in the skeleton. Remember that magnesium deficiency may occur in chronic alcoholics, cirrhosis of the liver, toxemias of pregnancy, protein energy malnutrition, and malabsorption syndrome. In other words, inability to reabsorb or to absorb magnesium. So the principal clinical features attributed to magnesium deficiency, I've told you: irritability, tetany, hyperreflexia, and then in case of hyporeflexia. So requirement are estimated. And what requirement are we talking about? 340 milligrams per day should be taken at most for adults in terms of magnesium. Let's see iron quickly. And now you should understand that we're about to discuss a very important mineral, iron. So let's see iron now. In discussing iron, it's important that we understand that iron is of a great importance in human nutrition. Very great importance in human nutrition. And the adult human body contains between 3 to 4 grams of iron, of which about 60 to 70% is present in the blood as circulating iron, and the rest, 1 to 1.5 grams, as storage iron. So each gram of hemoglobin contains about 3.34 milligrams of iron. Very importantly, we must take note that 60 to 70% of these ions we're talking about in the human body is in the blood as hemoglobin ion, and they are also the circulating ion, and the rest, 1 to 1.5 grams, as storage ion. Let's take note of that. Now, to the functions of iron. Iron is necessary for many functions in the body, including formation of hemoglobin, brain development and function, regulation of body temperature, muscle activity, catecholamine metabolism, and all these are key and very important that we take note as the functions of iron. Going further, the lack of iron directly affects the immune system. And how does it do that? It diminishes the number of T cells and production of antibodies. And you know the importance of T cells and antibodies in the system in terms of immunity and to help fight foreign bodies. So besides hemoglobin, iron is a component of myoglobin, that is the cytochromes, catalase, and certain enzyme systems. Iron is essential for binding oxygen to the blood cells, and that's how you know it matured cells. The central function of iron is oxygen transport and cell respiration. The central function of iron is oxygen transport. That's the main function of iron in the body. Take note, the main function, the central function of iron is oxygen transport and cell respiration. Let's look at sources. Sources of iron. There are two forms of iron, heme iron and non-heme iron. Heme iron is better absorbed than non-heme iron. Foods rich in heme iron are liver, meat, poultry, and fish. They are not only important sources of readily available iron, but they also promote the absorption of non-heme iron in plant foods, eaten at the same time. Now, the iron content of milk is low in all mammalian species. Iron content of breast milk averages less than 0.2 milligram per day, and it is well utilized. Now, food containing non-heme iron are those of vegetable origin, not the animal origin. And they include cereals, green leafy vegetables, legumes, nuts, oil seeds, jaggery, and dried nuts. The bioavailability of non-heme iron is poor owing to the presence of phytates, oxalates, carbonates, phosphates, and dietary fiber, which indeed interferes with iron absorption. The diet, which is predominantly vegetarian, contains large amounts of these inhibitors. Example, phytates in bran, phosphates in egg yolk, tannin in tea, and oxalates in vegetables. In some areas of the country, you have significant amounts of iron which may be derived from cooking in iron vessels. It is important that you understand these sources, but most importantly is to know that there are two forms of iron, the heme iron and the non-heme iron. And the foods rich in heme iron are liver, meat, poultry, and fish. And foods containing non-heme iron are those of vegetable origin. And I've told you they include cereals, green leafy vegetables, legumes, nuts, oil seeds, and also jaggery and dried fruits. Let's see the absorption of iron. Iron is mostly absorbed from duodenum and upper small intestine in the ferrous state according to body needs. The rate of iron absorption is influenced by a great many factors, like iron reserves of the subjects, the presence of inhibitors, for example, phosphates, and the promoters, for example, ascorbic acid and ascorbic acid-rich foods of iron absorption, and disorders of duodenum and jejunum. So iron absorption is greater than there is an increased demand for iron. Iron absorption is greater when there is an increased demand for iron. As for example, during pregnancy, you will find it happening because the demand for iron is much, and so it will increase. Iron absorption from habitual normal diets is less than 5%, and the bioavailability is very poor. So the absorbed iron is transported as plasma ferritin, and they are stored in the liver, spleen, bone marrow, and kidney. So what are the takeaways from this absorption? The takeaway include that iron is mostly absorbed from the duodenum and the upper small intestine, and it does this in the ferrous state. Now, the rate of iron absorption is influenced by so many factors, like iron reserves of the subjects, the presence of inhibitors and the promoters. And finally, iron absorption is greater when there is an increased demand for iron, as for example during pregnancy. Take note about that. What happens when there is iron losses in the body? Can we see that now? Let's discuss that now. Iron losses. The total daily iron loss of an adult is probably 1 milligram and about 12.5 milligram per 28 days cycle in menstruating women. Again, the total daily iron loss of an adult is probably 1 milligram and about 12.5 milligram per 28 days cycle in menstruating women. Take note about that. So the major routes of iron loss are: 1, through hemorrhage, and that is wherever blood is lost, iron is lost, and the causes of which may be physiological, maybe during menstruation and childbirth, or it may be pathological when somebody has hookworm, malaria, hemorrhoids, or peptic ulcer. On the other hand, another major route of iron loss apart from hemorrhage is basal losses. Hemorrhage can be, number one, like I told you, it can be through physiological cases or pathological cases. Very, very important, so that you take note of that in case you have a theory questions to discuss hemorrhage. 2 parts, either through physiological process, menstruation or childbirth, or pathological through hookworm infection, malaria, hemorrhoid, peptic ulcer. Now, number 2 major routes of iron loss now is basal losses, such as excretion through urine, sweat, and bile, and the desquamated surface cells. So this is important, and you are to take note about that. Now let us see iron deficiency. There's a difference between iron losses and iron deficiency now. Now, there are 3 stages of iron deficiency. 3 stages of iron deficiency. A, the first stage, is characterized by decreased storage of iron. The first stage is characterized by decreased storage of iron without any other detectable abnormalities. Decreased storage of iron without any other detectable abnormalities. And the second one, B, is an intermediate stage of latent iron deficiency. Latent, you don't even see it, you may not notice it, but it's happening gradually. Intermediate stage of latent iron deficiency, that is, iron stores are exhausted, but anemia has not occurred yet. Anemia has not occurred yet, but the iron store has been exhausted. Its recognition depends upon measurement of serum ferritin levels. The percentage saturation of transferrin falls from a normal value of 30% to less than 50%. So you could have the latent iron deficiency, just as I've told you, in a case where there is no anemia showing right now. The blood level is not showing that it has gone down, but the ferrous state, the reserve, has been, exhausted already. Iron stores or reserve has been exhausted. Now, the end result of iron deficiency is nutritional anemia. Nutritional anemia. That's the end result of iron deficiency in the body. And this is not a state, it's not a disease entity. It's not a disease entity because it can be taken care of. It's rather a syndrome caused by malnutrition. It is rather a syndrome caused by malnutrition. And in the widest sense, malnutrition is something that can be resolved, managed once detected quickly. And it is evident. You can see it. It's not something that can be hidden. Besides anemia, there may be other functional disturbances, such as impaired mediated immunity, reduced resistance to infection, and increased mobility and mortality, and diminished work performance. And so, under minerals, we have quickly seen calcium, we have discussed phosphorus, sodium, potassium, magnesium, iron, and we have looked into different aspects of it. So take time to watch, to listen, to pause, to take notes, and read up when you have your textbook these topics to get more knowledge. And remember that you should make your summary to be sure that you have read and you've listened to it. And also, if you have any question, place it on the Google Classroom comment section. I will attend to them when I get to the class. Thank you. We'll continue with the next topic. Okay, you're welcome once again. In continuation with the discussion of mineral, let's quickly look at iodine, fluorine, iodine, and fluorine. Just a summary of them. Now, iodine is an essential micronutrient and it is required for the synthesis of thyroid hormones, thyroxine hormone, and thyroidotroponin hormone. I repeat, triiodothyronine hormone, containing respectively 4 and 3 atoms of iodine. Now, iodine is an essential mineral and it is essential in minute amounts for the normal growth and development and well-being of all humans. For the adult human body, it contains about 50 milligrams of iodine, and the blood level is about 8 to 12 micrograms per dl. In terms of sources, the best source of iodine are seafoods. An example include the sea fish and sea salt. An example include the sea fish, sea salt, and cod liver oil. Smaller amounts occur in other foods, example milk, meat, vegetables, cereals. And the iodine content of fresh water is small and very variable. Let's see in terms of deficiency. The most obvious consequence of iron deficiency is goiter. But recent studies have indicated that there is a much wider spectrum of disorder. Some of them so severe as to be disabling, and they include hypothyroidism and retarded physical development and impaired mental function. You also have increased rate of spontaneous abortion and stillbirth, neurological cretinism, including deaf, mutism, and myxoendomatous cretinism. Now, all these are diseases that have been discovered in addition to the well-known popular goiter disease. And so, iron deficient disorders, refer to all the effects of iodine deficiency on human growth and development, which can be prevented by correction of iodine deficiency. Very, very well, it can be corrected by, correction of the iodine deficiency. So for requirement, the daily requirement of iodine for adults is placed at 150 microgram, and that is the recommendation. However, recommendation of WHO of 250 microgram per day for iodine during pregnancy have also been adopted. So this amount is normally supplied by a well-balanced diet and drinking water, except in regions where food and water are deficient in iodine. So it is important that the water is rich in iodine. For the women, for the pregnant women, it is good to take 250 microgram. For adults, generally, 150 microgram is okay. Now quickly let us see fluorine. Fluorine, that's the next mineral, fluorine. Fluorine is the most abundant element in nature, very abundant in nature. Being so highly reactive, it is never found in its elemental gaseous form, but only in combined form. So about 96% of the fluoride in the body is found in bones and in our teeth. Fluorine is essential for the normal mineralization of bones and formation of dental enamel. What are the sources of fluorine? The principal sources of fluorine available to man are A. Drinking water. The major source of fluorine to man is drinking water. In most parts of Nigeria, the fluoride content of drinking water is about 0.5 milligram per liter. But in fluorosis endemic areas, it may be as high as 3 to 12 milligram per liter. You also find fluoride, apart from drinking water, in foods. And fluorides occur in traces in many foods. But some foods, such as sea fish, cheese, tea, are reported to be rich in fluorides. How about in cases of deficiency or when it is excess? In deficiency cases or in excess cases, fluorine is often called a two-edged sword. Prolonged ingestion of fluoride through drinking water in excess of the daily requirement is associated with dental and skeletal fluorosis. And so, it is important that we understand this. And inadequate intake with dental caries. The use of fluoride is recognized as the most effective means available for prevention of dental caries. So for those who have problem of dental caries, the use of fluoride has been recognized to be very effective in treating it. And we have seen that prolonged ingestion of fluoride through drinking water in excess of the daily requirement will cause dental problem and skeletal fluorosis. So what is the requirement? The recommended level of fluoride in drinking water in Nigeria and in other parts of the country or other parts of the world include 0.5 to 0.8 milligram per liter. In temperate countries where the water intake is low, the optimum level of fluoride in drinking water is accepted as 1 to 2 milligram per liter. Okay, so we will then discuss the trace elements, just a bit of it, just to have the knowledge of them. The trace elements, which include zinc, copper, cobalt, chromium, selenium, and molybdenum. Again, copper, zinc, cobalt, chromium, selenium, molybdenum. These are